Welcome to the Spaghetti Wall podcast, where we dive into life.
Both the messy parts and the moments of joy, and everything in between. I'm Jason Wilcox, licensed clinical social worker.
And I'm Dr. Thaen Saelee, a licensed clinical psychologist.
In this session, we're going to talk about emotional manipulation. It's a topic that comes up often when I'm working with clients where their partners are emotionally manipulating them. So how would you define emotional manipulation?
It has to be intentional. The other person has an intention of getting this other person to do something they want for their benefit. And it's using shame or guilt or putting blame on someone to enhance that feeling. And what really is happening when I talk to folks about this is it heightens your anxiety and it triggers that sympathetic nervous system of like something's wrong, something's off. So it really puts you on this heightened, elevated sense of alertness.
Yeah, I would maybe suggest that it can be done without awareness too.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I think you and I are on the same page. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but are you referring to when someone's just like emotionally reacting to
Correct.
something without the intention to harm?
Yes.
But it is unhealthy to blame or to find fault or to become defensive, right? Well, you do this too. I'm not the only one, and you act like it's always me, but you do this too. Like that kind of reactiveness.
Yeah, because emotional manipulation, what's happening is the person is intentionally or unintentionally trying to trigger an emotional state in the other person that tries to force a behavior or feeling that ultimately tries to get some type of a reaction or outcome. And so sometimes when people are triggered and kind of like that negative core belief has taken over in their mind, they might get reactive, defensive, move to a passive aggressive communication in that defensiveness and cause that emotional manipulation to happen in the other person unintentionally. And there's many people out there that do this intentionally as well, though.
Yeah, can you say more about the folks that intentionally have a motive to cause someone dysregulation, cause someone to feel an emotional reaction that is not proactive, is maladaptive and not adaptive?
Someone just told me this one the other day. They went and sat through one of those presentations for a timeshare, and they agreed to go through the timeshare presentation for a free night. And while they were going through this timeshare presentation, the person doing the presentation at the end, when they said, no, thank you, started manipulating them, running them down, saying, well, you said, and became very aggressive to impact their emotions and make them feel terrible for not signing up. And so they started doing that. That is emotional manipulation on purpose. They're purposely trying to manipulate their emotion to get them to do the behavior they want.
So I'm thinking here, the tactic is to wear you down emotionally or cause you to become emotionally dysregulated. And I think it can feel and look differently, right? I think
Yes.
some people can start to doubt themselves and their reality because things get so disorientated. Like, I swear you said that, but you're saying you didn't say that. Or I did see you do that, but you're saying no, that didn't happen. I think this one is a classic one. It's gaslighting, where someone is purposely distorting the reality to get you to feel self-doubt, to get you to feel like you're going insane, to get you to question your reality.
Yeah. There's the gaslight. I mean, there's a lot of different kinds for sure. But the big point here is that the emotional manipulation, whether intentional or not, it's the impacting someone else's emotions to try to manipulate them into some type of emotion or behavior. But I think it'd be good. There's some ways to be able to kind of identify or see if emotional manipulation is happening. And I think the first one here is when you're questioning your own reality. And so that's what you're talking about, like with that gaslighting. One thing that you might start feeling is wait, is my reality here? And so that might be an indicator that possibly your partner is emotionally manipulating you.
Yeah, and I wanna be careful with that word gaslighting too, because I had one individual who said, "My partner keeps saying I'm gaslighting them," when actually in reality, we just had a miscommunication, like, one person's remembering different, and they're not intentionally saying, "No, this didn't happen," they just remember differently. So it's like a misinterpretation, an innocent misinterpretation of things or events or plans versus purposely knowing the reality and then distorting it for that other person. So the term gaslighting, I learned from a client because she had researched it, comes from this movie long, long ago where in the movie, the husband would dim the gas to the lantern. And the wife would say, "Is it me or the lantern is dimmer? Like, it seems dimmer." And he would purposely lie to her. "No, no, no, you're going crazy." And every night he would dim it just a little bit. And when she would bring it up, he would gaslight her. So this is where the term gaslighting comes from, where, yeah, the person is lying about and distorting and purposely doing it to make you question your reality.
So again, number one here, you're questioning your own reality might be a way to assess if you're being emotionally manipulated. And there's a caveat to this one that you got to be careful. So if you are questioning your own reality with your partner in these situations, it might be an indicator. So you would want to look at what are they saying, what's happening here? Are they doing behaviors that are emotionally manipulative? On the flip side, this can happen, so you got to be careful, is are you caught up in your own distortion? So, for example, if I have a negative core belief that was getting extremely loud in my head and getting really intense, I may not be seeing things completely clearly. So, this gets a little convoluted and complicated if the other person does not share that same reality, like we were talking about a minute ago. They might feel like you're questioning your own reality, but if they're not doing the behaviors of emotional manipulation, it may or may not be an accurate indicator.
A second sign of emotional manipulation may be that you're constantly feeling like you have to prove your love to your partner, or that by siding with them, by agreeing with them, by, I would say, appeasing them, you're showing your loyalty. If if you would just do this, it would really show me that you care. Oh, well, you don't ever want to do this with me. For example, you might set a healthy boundary, but then your friend might say, "Oh, you must not care about me if you don't want to come."
What's happening is they're going to emotionally manipulate one of your behaviors where you feel like, hey, I need a boundary here, or I need space, or I'd like to do this thing, or sometimes I want to go out with some friends. And then what happens is they'll start doing some type of way of manipulating that to tear you down or make it a bad thing. When there's, if you look at your behavior, anyone looking inwards objectively would go, there's nothing wrong with what you're doing, and it's absolutely okay.
A more recent one that just popped up as you're saying that was one partner would say to this individual, "You're never home when I'm home." And this person had to reality test, you know? They're like, "Well, that's only true on Tuesday and Thursday when I have this class and this workshop and this meeting and this event." And so they were able to see that that was a tactic of making them feel guilty that they weren't home just those 2 days.
You know, I'll own something myself. Like I used to have a real strong negative core belief around my partner taking off with friends on long trips. And so when Tan and I first met, I still had this negative core belief wrapped around this thing, this behavior. And so Tan would be like, hey, I'm going to go on this trip with my friends and be gone for a week. And I would have that trigger happen. The negative core belief would come out. Oh, I'm not good enough for her, and now I'm triggered and reactive. And when I look back at those situations, I became emotionally manipulative. I absolutely did. And I would tell things to Tan that would make her feel bad or make her feel like she's hurting me or harming me. It took me a little bit to understand what I was doing and to see it, because in our reactive states, it's hard to see. But once I was able to start seeing that, I could correct that behavior. And I remember in the middle when I was transitioning, starting to see it, and I was trying to work through it, and I'd still have some reaction. I remember some of our conversations, I would say, look, I'm having a reaction, but it's not about you. I need to be able to process through this. Please do what you need to do. And that was our transition period. But before that, I became emotionally manipulative, where I would make the comments, the digs, and in a reactive state. I didn't purposely try to manipulate you, but I was in that reactive state.
Yeah, I think there was one comment that I remember, and not that I didn't have empathy for your side of things, Jason. I was just like, well, yeah, that's how you're feeling. You go deal with your feelings. I still want to go hang out with my friends. And, you were able to show me that you were working on that. You did something really sweet. So I'll just share with the listeners. Jason, for my birthday one year, he booked tickets for me and all my friends to hang out together in San Diego. And that was like a couple days away from him. And yeah, this would be a point of contention. And as we were working through this topic for you, you just really showed me that, like, it's not about you. I want you to go enjoy your time. I totally understand your need for female companionship and hanging out with your friends. And so that was a big gesture on my end to reduce my anxiety and my nervous system, to go like every time I want to hang out with my friends, I'm hurting my husband. And that didn't feel good for me. But there were times where I was like, yeah, this is you that you need to work on. I don't feel I'm doing anything wrong. But there were those digs like, oh, like hanging out with us is not enough, or hanging out with me and the kids are not enough for you. So, yeah, I think that's a great example. It wasn't intentional, but it was a reaction to something you were struggling with.
Right. And you stated it, like it came out in my language. What my negative core belief was is I wasn't enough. And so I would project that onto you. And then it would confuse you. It would make you question your reality, right? Because here's this behavior that's totally acceptable and okay to do. And I'm having a reaction to it, which is making you feel confused about a very okay, normal, good behavior to go hang out with people. And so, yeah, it was emotional manipulation. And so, what accidentally could have been happening is, with our first 2 points here, is one, you're having that emotional reality disconnect of like what's going on. And two, it didn't sound like you went there with my emotional manipulation. You could have gone to the second step where, do I have to stay to prove my love? Do I have to like not go hang out with my friends just so my husband feels good enough? Which that wouldn't have been healthy in our
No, and
relationship.
that didn't happen because I
Right.
still prioritize my time with my friends, and I make a point to go out and do other things outside of our family and our marriage. And so it didn't get to the point where I felt I needed to prove my love and loyalty to you, because I felt I was already doing that and I was doing that enough.
So remember, that's number two, where conversations constantly become about proving your love and loyalty can be an indicator of emotional manipulation. Number three, you feel guilt and shame for things that aren't your responsibility. This one I see happen a lot, where people, we've talked about this in other episodes, where your partner starts making you responsible for their emotions and you can't be. Like the example I gave a little bit ago of myself, right? Of having that reaction years ago with you going on trips with friends. I tried to make you responsible for my emotions, which isn't your responsibility. I have to be responsible for my emotions. If I make you responsible for them, it's going to cause a conflict. It's going to cause a rift, a pressure in our relationship, because there could have been a part of you that wanted to start being responsible for my emotions.
The fourth sign is what we call emotional whiplash, where you get the love bombing and then all of a sudden there's this explosive blaming, guilt shaming, manipulation. It's like this yo yo, right? Like you're always bouncing back from, like, oh, whoa, I thought we were fine. And all of a sudden I'm doing something bad in the relationship. I thought I was a great partner. And all of a sudden now I'm horrible, and I'm making you feel bad, and I'm making you feel not good, not love, and I have to prove it to you. So this like yo-yoing causes this emotional whiplash, where you don't feel stable at all in the relationship. The foundation feels wobbly. You do not know when the cracks are. You don't know when the floor starts to turn into lava. So it's very destabilizing.
I'm not trying to tear anyone down, but my experience, my last marriage, that I felt that often. It was a lot of all of a sudden love bombing, you're great, and then all of a sudden you're terrible, you're not doing enough, and you're doing all these terrible things. And it was back and forth and back and forth. And on one hand, it felt great when the love bombing was happening, and then it just felt destructive on the other. And then it was just leave me in this kind of like chaotic feeling of not knowing what do I do.
When you start to feel disorientated in your emotions, in your reality, in what felt safe and stable, and everything is copacetic one moment, and all of a sudden, it's 0 to 100, that's when you start to kind of go, oh, some of the flags are here. Let me observe and maybe let me talk to someone about it, maybe check in with other people. Don't be afraid to share your experiences because some of these things a lot of people are experiencing and may not know. Sometimes it's slow and insidious. Sometimes it's right in your face and you're in kind of a intimate partner abuse situation and not knowing how to ask for help. You feel stuck in the cycle. If you're starting to feel these ways or you notice you have felt this way, kind of, tune into yourself. We're not asking you to change your partner. We're just saying if you're feeling this way, start to take notice.
So, number 5, your emotional reactions feel outsized. I was talking to a client the other day and their partner, they had a situation around potty training, and it became an explosive thing right out of the gate of just one saying, hey, could we do this thing while doing potty training? And the other person blew up. And then, of course, they blew up. And so everybody's feeling big emotions over this situation that when you look back at it, it's like, well, why were there such big emotions? It's one thing to have big emotions, for example, if your dog just died or something that is a big situation. You look back and it's like, yeah, anybody in that situation is going to have a big emotion. But if you're looking back at it, kind of like the potty training thing, it's like, wait, but most people aren't going to have a big emotion there. There might be emotional manipulation happening from you or your partner because this is a situation where you're just trying to communicate about something. And now we have big emotions happening.
Yeah, and what would you say these big emotions are stemming from, Jason? If it's not about the potty training, for your example, where is it stemming from? Why is it becoming so in to the actual thing that's happening?
Comes back to the biggest thing we talk about on every episode is the negative core belief. So what would have happened here is one partner would have said, hey, potty training, could we do this thing differently? The other partner, they hear it through the filter of the negative core belief as you're not doing good enough as my partner at helping me with this kid.
Mm.
So it comes back to that negative core belief all of a sudden of I'm not good enough. So now we're going to have a big reaction. Once the big reaction happens, what happens in couples is then it starts conditioning and training the other person to have a big reaction back. So it starts feeding their negative core belief of I'm not lovable because I can't talk to them, or I don't hold value because they're talking to me this way. Theirs get fueled, the other person gets fueled, and everybody has big reactions. And it's a triggered reactive state to that negative core belief.
The sixth sign of emotional manipulation is that you feel like you're always having to walk on eggshells and that you are fearful or you're careful about what you say or have to say around this person to avoid a explosion, to avoid feeling emotionally shamed or guilt tripped, to just avoid this emotional tactic of getting you to feel bad so that you would give in. You
Yeah.
would kind of relent and concede.
Yeah, I see this one a lot when I work with individuals and couples. They'll talk about their partners and I'll say something like, well, have you talked to your partner about that? Or have you brought that concern up? Oh, I could never talk to my partner about that. It's like, well, why not? Oh, they would blow up. They would get so mad. They would get so hurt. They would be devastated. Well, that's a problem. That's your partner emotionally manipulating you because it's important to be able to bring these kinds of things up. It's important to have open conversations in relationships.
Yes, I think sometimes there's a real and concrete retaliation and consequences to someone having a lot of power in the relationship with finances, with decision making around what you can and can't do, activities in the house. And so I have heard clients say and individuals say, like, I'm scared because if I anger them or they get really mad, I won't have access to X, Y, or Z, or this is going to happen because it's happened before. So I think there's like real fear and real consequences that are harsh and intolerable. So these individuals stay quiet, they peacemake and they concede and they flex and they bend and they mask.
Yeah. And again, that just comes back to that emotional manipulation when someone's doing those kinds of things. The emotional manipulation is impacting you, or if you're doing it to your partner, it's impacting their emotions, and now it's changing behavior so that the person can't operate at a level that's going to be healthy in the relationship.
Of course, most times individuals report feeling very small in these types of relationship, feeling all responsible and that like they need to correct themselves and they need to make this person happy or they need to keep appeasing for there to be peace and harmony, which does not sound like a very sustainable type of relationship.
No, it's not. Again, because it's going to put a tremendous amount of pressure on that relationship, and it's just going to keep that pressure going and going. A lot of pressure normally breaks things down and causes problems. Our seventh one here, they tell you how you feel instead of listening. I see this happen in two ways. Either they tell you how you feel and what you mean, or they start telling you how your actions are causing them to feel a negative emotion when you aren't doing anything harmful or wrong. So, in other words, they're making you responsible for their emotions. So, either one can be an emotional manipulation. So, someone coming along and saying, well, you're feeling really mad at me because I saw it in your face. Oh, no, you can't tell me you're not mad at me. I saw it. You are mad at me, right? This is someone that's manipulating you when you're not feeling mad because they're not hearing you.
Yeah, I've had to call some of my clients out on this, right? Like, okay, did you check in with this person when they say, where are you going? And you interpret this as they're mad that you're leaving the house, right? Did you ask more questions? Were you curious instead of jumping to this conclusion that because they're asking and their tone and their shortness means to you that they're upset with you when there were no further discussion to explore that? I usually challenge my clients on that.
Yep. But what happens here is with that first piece I'm saying, that when someone says, hey, you're feeling this way, it's going to start manipulating the other person where they feel like they can't just be like, hey, fair enough. Have you ever seen pictures of me that where I'm not smiling? I got RBF. I mean, I just have a look on my face that some people say I just look really serious. Some people are like, are you mad? So I get asked that question many times, and it's just, I don't know, my face just has that look of, I guess, anger. But if Tan did that to me and kept telling me I'm mad at her all the time just because my face has this look on it, it would get very frustrating. It would start impacting the relationship in not a healthy way. If I can't say, oh, no, I just, my face is doing what my face is doing.
Yeah, I think we came to that conclusion because each time I would say, hey, what are you thinking about? Or, hey, babe, is something up? You have this look. And, or Jason would ask me, what makes you ask me that question? And usually the answer is because there's a look on your face, you know?
And my client asks every now and again, was that upsetting you? And I'm like, oh, no, I got some RBF, so
Hmm.
it just is. So that's one thing, is watching out for someone telling you what your feelings and intentions are when it does not match what your feelings are. That's emotional manipulation. And the second one, like I said here, the reason why some people may not agree with me is because a lot of people say it's important to state how you're feeling. So if I said right now to Tan, well, you talking in the show is making me feel like I'm inferior to you, right?
Yeah. And then
What
I would say, that can be your interpretation. However, that's not my reality. So I would actually use the word reality instead of responsibility. You're making the other person's behavior and then your interpretation of their behavior the reality. So you're telling the other person, well, because you're acting this way, this is the reality.
Yeah, it can be trying to distort someone else's reality. It can also be the fact that it is responsible for my emotions, because what I'm basically trying to manipulate, if I said that to you, I'd be trying to manipulate you to not talk as much, right? So it's a
Mhm.
manipulation, whether I intentionally did it or didn't intentionally do it. If I say that to you over and over, you would want to start not talking as much. So then I would capitalize on the moment of me talking more, right?
Mhm. I see what you're saying.
So you got to be careful of trying to say, well, you're making me feel this way, instead of just recognizing the feeling you're having inside is something inside of you. So, like I teach my clients, and this would be hard for your audience to adopt if you haven't gone back and listened to what negative core beliefs are. But a healthy way to do this is saying, I'm feeling this way. It's an ownership of I'm having a feeling, and not saying you're making me feel this way.
Mm.
Another way to say it, if you want to go to the complex skill, is right now my negative core belief is really loud of telling me that I'm not good enough, and I'm feeling it pretty intensely right now.
Yeah, that's a great way of owning it and taking accountability. I think it's very disarming when you say things like that, Jason. And we've had a couple moments where you were able to say it like that. And I know for me, I was like, oh, yeah, I feel like a relief off of my shoulders when you are taking accountability in that way and using that kind of script.
Right, because the feeling is actually in me. You don't own it.
I don't own it. I'm not responsible for changing it. And even if some couples find that even if the other person changes, if you're not working on pivoting from this spiral and this negative belief that you're bought into, it doesn't matter how hard your partner's trying to convince you. It's never going to be enough.
Right, because we're not dealing with what's actually causing the feeling, which is the negative core belief.
The eighth and last sign of emotional manipulation is that your boundaries keep getting pushed, they keep getting crossed. You're setting them, but then they get blurred. You're setting them, but then you lose sight of them. And now you don't have boundaries or you forgot what they were.
And I would even say some couples, when I work with them, they're like, boundaries? Like you're supposed to have boundaries in a relationship, but isn't it about love if there are no boundaries? And it's like, whoa, we need boundaries in relationship. Boundaries are very critical and important to have in relationships.
Boundaries are kind and boundaries are honesty. Boundary is understanding that you're human.
If you don't mind me using this example, Tan sometimes has sound sensitivity, right? And so she needs sometimes like, hey, I need the volume down, right? This is her just letting us know that this is a boundary she kind of needs in place in that moment so that it feels okay in that space with us. And so knowing that boundary, it's important that we hear it and turn it down. What happens with emotional manipulation is someone pushes past this boundary. So they're like, oh, come on, you can push through that. Or, it's not that loud. You were able to handle this last time, right? They're trying to push through these boundaries and trying to make it so that boundary doesn't exist anymore.
That's a good example. To that point, they're trying to make you compromise your boundaries. They're trying to make you distort that you are okay and can be okay with the sound. Or like if a friend made a joke or a comment that you didn't like or that was inappropriate and you called them out on it and they're like, "Oh, come on, I'm just joking."
Mm.
They're blurring the boundary of like, that was not a joke. That was really mean and that was uncalled for. And I'm calling you out on it. And yet now you're making it so blurry. You're saying it wasn't a real mean comment. We're just kidding. Don't take it so serious. It was just a joke. A common one is we don't see you often. So here, let me push your boundaries because this is a special occasion. This is something rare. And so I want you to drink. That was one thing from my past when it's a celebration and I'm like, no, no, thanks. I don't want to drink. It was always being pushed because it was a special occasion or it was rare that we got to see each other. And so that's one boundary I can name from my past that always got blurred or pushed.
Yeah. I still remember the first time I went to a celebration with your family and I was sitting there and they started passing out a shot and your brother brought it to me and I said, oh, no, thank you. I don't drink. And he said, oh, no, this is our tradition. It's important to do here. And I took him serious. I was like, oh, I don't want to be rude. So I drank it this time. And I told Tan after and she's like, what?
No, and I laugh about it because I love my siblings, and I know which brother you're talking about just by the way you describe the situation because he is, he's a jokester and he enjoys livening up the party. This is me trying to understand from his perspective. But as soon as you told me the story, I already know which sibling it was that did this to you. It's been important for Jason and I to come together and talk about our shared boundaries as a couple, as a family, and that it's important when they do get pushed in any situation, whether it's with our families or friends or with colleagues or just strangers or community members at the daycare. Like we talk about these things. And so it's been super helpful in just going, okay, well, did that seem like it was being minimized or am I being taken seriously? Or like, oh, that felt like you're kind of not addressing the real issue here by me saying I didn't like that,
Yeah.
right? So I think it feels like dismissive, I think, when boundaries are blurred.
Dismissiveness can be one of the
Mhm.
things that happens. There's multiple things, right, that people can do to break your boundaries through emotional manipulation. And to clarify for the audience, I absolutely love your brother. He is awesome. But pretty much every celebration, he still definitely tries many different techniques to emotionally manipulate me to get me to drink every single time.
And then, I think we shared like eating. My mom's love language is to feed
Yeah.
you. And Jason doesn't have a big appetite, but like our bowls are humongous and they just keep wanting to fill your bowl. So we've talked about these are boundaries, but culturally I think we've landed on a place of like, you can say no or like, thanks, Amma, I'm full.
And again, no one, I don't think your brother's trying to be harmful or mean, or your mom when she has the love language of eat my food, right? Like, no one's trying to be evil, but it is still an emotional manipulation.
Yes, it
It's
is.
still trying to get someone to do a behavior through manipulating that emotion so that they give in or do something different or whatever it is.
Hmm.
So that's just another sign is, are you having to keep giving up your boundaries? You might be being emotionally manipulated.
Yeah, especially one thing to check in about with yourself is, and these are the tools we're also providing, is that we can't change the other person. So with all of these kind of signs and tools of emotional manipulation, it's really your job to assess yourself, how you're feeling, how you're being impacted, reflecting on that, checking in with other people to really go, yeah, this doesn't feel good for me. And let me keep working on how I can address whether it's through assertive communication, setting boundaries, taking time away, distancing, making requests, right? Or even seeking out professional help, seeking out third parties that can be objective, reality testing. Yeah, I think presenting facts to other people and making sure that your reality is not just based on this partnership.
Especially when it doesn't feel good and it's making you feel like you can't be you. That's really important that you get to be you. But if they're emotionally manipulating you to try to control how you behave and operate, that's not healthy. So it's going to be really important that you're assertive with your partner. If they're doing these things, it's important to just state the behavior. Right now, you're telling me that I have to let go of my boundary in order to be okay in this space, and I'm not okay with that. So it's important to be assertive. It's important to just state it. And if they want to cross that line where they're going to emotionally manipulate, it's important to say, I'm going to ask us to stop here or pause here and step away from it and allow the space for them to do what they need to do, allow you some space to do what you need to do. But if they're not hearing you of stop emotional manipulation, stop this behavior, give it some space, and you might have to have deeper conversations. You might need a therapist to get involved to help too.
I'm a very somatic person and I use imagery a lot in my sessions. So I usually say, if you're the couple in the relationship, if you're the partner that feels like a pretzel and your partner feels like the straw, then that is heavily mismatched, right? So you're feeling like you're contorting yourself, you're doing everything you can to keep the peace, and this person is very straight and rigid and cannot flex for you. There's a problem there. So that's the imagery I'm going to leave our audience with.
It's a great image.
Hopefully, you guys found some of these things helpful. any other topics you want us to talk about. For more episodes, go to the Spaghetti Wall podcast that we have on all the platforms. We also have a YouTube channel. We're on Facebook and Instagram. And our mental health website is www.avidcounseling.org.